Oh no. Oh, there we are. Hello everyone, Richard Carlton here. Welcome to an awesome Monday where we're going to be doing awesome stuff with the FileMaker platform. So I am my perfunctory introduction, Richard Carlton, creator of FMTraining.tv, where we do great FileMaker training. Why? Why, you ask? Ask the people online with us. We are here to make you awesome in FileMaker so you can build awesome solutions, to build custom applications that your customers need so they can do great things. Because if your customers do great things, then they'll love you, they'll love FileMaker, and then we're all successful, right? So today is going to be day one of about 4 or 5 days of FM Starting Point, what we call Starting Point 20 or 2020. We're using the year version. I think Polaris, I get strong indications, not concrete ones, but they're like leaning towards not necessarily renaming it, but putting the year on it, because they like keeping it synced up with the years better, especially with the rolling updates and upgrades, things like that. So we just cut the corner because I don't want to have to rename the starting point in the middle of the year, right? So there is no starting point 8. Starting point 8, version 8, is really the 2020 version, which is what I have on my desktop right here. And so these are the basic version. This is the enhanced versions. We do need to send the links out to you folks on that. Pretty much everyone here has a subscription. If you're a lurker and you don't have a bundle subscription of some type, then you won't be getting the enhanced ones here. You'll get the basic ones. Additionally, there's going to be an additional set of 4 pretty much basic ones, and these are going to be the ones that are basically specifically tested and tuned for the enterprise. Once again, we were meeting with Jesse Barnum last week, and we're tuning it. We found a couple things in there where if we're trying to synchronize it to 500 people here and 500 people there was a couple non-lean design things we did quite by accident. I did not know about it, so we're in there kind of cleaning that up, and so there will be an enterprise version as well. If you're new to FileMaker, if you're trying to learn, you need to stay on the basic version or the enhanced version here. They're simpler to understand from the relational diagram because we're using the keys, the relationships are easier to understand. With the enhanced version, we've changed some things around. The primary goal of the enterprise is to be high speed and not necessarily train you. We don't care about training. These are the ones here that are for training. They still scale. We've scaled all these up to like 500 users pretty easily. But if you want 500 users on each continent, so around the world you have 2,000 or 3,000 people using it at one time, yeah, additional concerns come in. So Ryan wants free videos, right on. iMog is here. That's great. iMog is back in the building. Pretty good. So how many hacks in 2020? I don't know. I mean, so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk. If I just pop open, so once again, this is US. They're all English versions. There's no Spanish, and we've done that before. We localized it, and it was a financial disaster because we don't have any financial incentive to do it that way, if that makes any sense. So we have the US basic, UK basic, Australia basic, AU basic, and EU basic. And the idea with these is that we've just adjusted the currency to fit a little better. And so this is what you'll see right here. You're going to fire it up, and it'll ask you, very importantly, what you need to know is that you want the beginning kind of layout design style, simpler to understand, more of an intermediate or more of an advanced. I almost never use intermediate or advanced. I always use the basic because it's simple for training and simple for a lot of things. So once again, when you can change that setting later. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. You could change the setting later on it if you want, but if you come over here to contacts, what you're going to do, if I get rid of myself and I zoom out a little bit, what you're going to notice is that there's no master detail portal, right? So that's the whole idea. Like if you start putting master detail portal, that's a harder concept for people to be learning, right, and training, right? Does that make sense? So we try to keep it as simple as possible. So this is that version. We simplify it back to kind of the original layouts that we had. They've been updated since starting point 5, but really that's kind of what they're kind of like starting point 5 level layouts, right? Very simple. So iMog's 102 degrees in Dallas, probably 90% humidity. Awesome. Okay, so so there's not like a ton of radical new stuff. If you're going to start a new project, you want to start with starting point 2020. So today, what are we talking about? One of the major upgrades in the FileMaker platform is the web viewers, right? So if you have the calendar over here, we all hopefully understand that the calendar is a web viewer. On Pro, we pop it in a new window. Here it is right here. And there's no data on here, which makes me wonder that you guys put a bug in here and didn't. It's supposed to auto-populate with the data, right, Calvin? Except I'm on the wrong, what year? Why am I on May and June? Oh, I'm on the 1 week calendar. I should be on the, that's really strange. Do you see what it just did, Calvin? It jumped to the,
I don't see your screen at the moment.
Oh, well, you don't see my screen? Well, everyone else is seeing my screen. So it jumped to the week default view, was the week view, not the 30-day view, and it jumped to May 31. So that's going to have to be revved and released in there and fixed. So anyway, so if you go to the current month, it puts some sample data in here for you, right? So it should be on the current month. It did create the sample data correctly here. So these are sample records. That way, when you go in the system, you can actually see data in here. And you can drag and drop events around. It's really great. Now, what's interesting about this is that it used to be that to communicate with between the web viewer and FileMaker, you had to use URL protocol, starting with FileMaker 19. You don't have to go out to the operating system to do this. You're simply issuing a direct call to the web viewer. It gets into this JavaScript, and Calvin can talk about it if you want, if anyone cares about that. But the short version is that prior to this release, you were going out to the operating system and saying, hey, operating system, give me this calendar, and vice versa. It's kind of tricky because you get into different versions of FileMaker. It was kind of fragile. And it wasn't our stuff being fragile, it was just the way Claris had implemented WebDirect. And so they finally patched that, fixed it with some direct calls. Calvin, you want to speak to that? In fact, we can make your screen if you want to share your screen. And you have to unmute yourself, of course, as part of the deal. So there you go.
Sure thing.
All right, where is your screen? There we go. So give us an update on what they changed and what you did, Calvin.
Okay, so this is FM starting point 20. This is the basic version. And let's go ahead and jump on into the calendar. And there's a few changes for the settings in the calendar. I'm going to go to layout mode. So view layout mode, or Command L. And we'll notice in the settings, I just double click to the web viewer. And here at the bottom of the web viewer setup window is allow JavaScript to perform FileMaker scripts. And that's really the big thing that it was added with FileMaker 19. It allows us to have, excuse me, for the JavaScript in the web viewer to call a script in FileMaker. And previous to that, we had to use the OpenURL protocol. And that would cause some problems. So let's see how this works. So as I select add a task, now we notice when we're in layout mode, there's no add task button. That's in the web viewer. So this isn't a FileMaker button. This is a button in the HTML. And I'll select add task. And right there, it ran a script. And then what we're seeing now is a card window. I'm going to say continue, and there it popped up on the 30th. Let's go to the script debugger and see this happen. I'll select add task, and you'll notice right now we have this script that's run 0882 new task, and here's the script parameter following that. It's telling it what date to enter as the date for that event. And so we were able to take a button in the web viewer and call a FileMaker script without using the FMP URL protocol. And previously, when we used the protocol, it could get confused about what version of FileMaker you were using, or maybe there was a number of different ways that it could break.
So
I'm going to go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. So there is a question here from one of our lurkers on Twitch, Alpha Lima 92651 wants to know if this can be synced to Google Calendar.
Yeah, so so this calendar that we're seeing right now is not a FileMaker calendar, like we said. It's designed by Full Calendar IO, and we have some information on that over here. I go to Calendar. Here, to find out more about that, you can go to Full Calendar IO, and they have something in here that is where you can have Google Calendar display in the full calendar, and I'm not seeing the documentation on it, but I know it was mentioned in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of those deals where there's probably 50
Mhm.
ways to solve the problem. So
Right.
you could go. My first gut would not be to go back to Full Calendar IO, because remember.
For
So
sure.
here's what's important to understand that Calvin kind of dodged around, is that the data. I'm going to go and escape out of here real quick, Calvin. I'm going to make you less than full screen just for the moment. So
Okay.
I'm back on mine for a little bit here. The data that's in this calendar here that makes this data up doesn't live in the calendar. It lives in FileMaker. So the question is, can you synchronize data in FileMaker to Google Calendar? Of course. The question is how you want to do that. And go ahead and just mute yourself, Calvin, if you're going to bounce around. We all get to hear what you're doing. So yes. So the idea is that the data lives in FileMaker. So the question is, can I sync data in FileMaker to Google Calendar? Of course. You can do it with Zulu, which is a third-party product from 360 Works. You can do it with Jonathan Ray, one of our engineers, wrote his own APIs to Google Calendar. I don't know how that would compare with Zulu.
Zulu is a lot faster. I also did a API integration with Google Calendar, and it took a long time to set it up and debug. Zulu makes it a lot easier.
Well, okay, so then I'm just going to put you on the spot, Calvin. It might be slightly uncomfortable. So the question was from AL9 to 651 was that, can we do this? And you promptly went off to the Full Calendar website.
Right. I wanted to go through the different options. And so the first idea is, does Full Calendar do it? And Full Calendar does it. And they say they do it. I haven't done it, though.
I would say that unless you're a JavaScript programmer, I would not pitch a random integration. Because here's the thing with Full Calendar IO. When we implement it, or you implement it, you're going to grab the code from their website and bring it down. Okay? And so you're not going to be talking to them as a service to do this, right? So if you're a JavaScript developer and you want the most painful process possible, then Calvin's number one suggestion, I guess, is the way to go with that, right? I always try to pick the first suggestion, Calvin, is the most realistic, and then you have the more obscure ones behind that. Then, of course, so you have Zulu. So Calvin, if you had to rate them in terms of complexity, what's the simplest one? You think Zulu's the simplest one?
Zulu's the simplest, yes.
Okay. Number 2 would be what? Roll your own API or talk to
with the insert from URL. Yep.
Yeah. And then number 3 would be to go to the Full Calendar IO website and to look and see how they're doing it with JavaScript and API calls, and to buy that or integrate it. But you would have to take their code and reverse engineer the calendar code and sync it in there. I'd rather clean a toilet barehanded with my fingers than do that. So if that tells you how unsavory that might be. Unless you're a JavaScript person. Like I got a couple of people here, JavaScript people, they love the JavaScript. Calvin's kind of Calvin, how would you rate your Java? Like medium, junior, medium? Like JavaScript. Like if I said go build it.
Very beginner. I just see the someone else's work and adjust it a little bit. I don't build that.
You appropriate it. We don't use. I think the other one said we don't. We're not stealing it. You're inspired by it, right? I think that was the word the other day. We're inspired. Okay. But yeah, the Full Calendar IO is open source. It's free. They have a paid version if you want to pay them for a version. We're not doing that, but they have a paid version that has Gantt charts on it, right, and some additional stuff. But so what happens is that someone else builds a JavaScript. The JavaScript works in a browser. So we take the JavaScript and figure out the hooks need to have it talk to FileMaker. That's really what FileMaker developers do. So like even this morning, one of my senior engineers who will remain nameless, who's probably sitting here if I dig around and look for him, was saying, oh, I've got to learn JavaScript. I'm like, why? I mean, he's a manager, so, I mean, he's got a full plate without learning anything new. And he's like, got to learn JavaScript. I go, why? I said, the goal with what we're doing is not to write new JavaScript. For every FileMaker developer, there's 50 or 100 developers out there who are writing JavaScript. It's like oxygen. Everyone does it, okay? So why reinvent the wheel with what these other people are doing? Because these people post stuff out there free all the time. One of the engineers had found a JavaScript library that worked in a browser. Then he takes the code apart, figures out how to have it talk to FileMaker, and suddenly we have web direct signatures on all the WebDirect clients, including Android. So it brings signature capture to Android, right? It's a free file that he's putting together, and it works. So you have to look at the level of complexity you want to engage with, right? And I'm pretty sure everyone here, with the exception of Nathan, okay, David, well, okay, so yeah, David Snyder. Some of you folks are really sharp people. Maybe you want to go down the job. Listen, if I was 20 and starting my company all over again, I would probably still do FileMaker, but I'd probably emphasize on JavaScript as a side thing to do with it. But I'm not 20 anymore. I mostly manage and train, obviously. So for me, it's like just another moving piece around the FileMaker world, right? But if you want to learn something new and you want to learn a new language, I would learn that, before something else, I would think, right? David says, is full calendar IO always going to be free? Well, it's been free for the last 5 years, 6 years. If you go to the website, once again, you can see that they have a paid version. I think they make money on that. Even Claris, in their add-ons, once again, we're back to this conversation, but during the keynote last year, DevCon, we basically gave them our calendar to the product management team. They took it, tried to make it a little bit more beautiful, but it was already pretty beautiful. And they put a thing on so when you actually go into the item, like this item, and you pop it, instead of like the relevant data here that we actually have right here, like the attached project calendar, they put a picture on it like, oh, you're going to be doing the project work at this location. It was a beautiful cinegraphic photo of this location. That's not reality for business, but it makes for a great keynote address. And so Calvin was sitting there bouncing up and down because he was watching all his hard work on the broadcast on live. It was really quite cool. So that's what they've done. Claris basically did what we're doing, but they're making it kind of an add-on, you drag and drop on. So once again, drag and drop add-ons is a conversation for tomorrow. We're going to be doing Christian Olson returns to do the drag and drop that we showed with that menu thing from last week on last Tuesday. Really awesome content. He's going to go through the drag and drop into starting point and showing that. And then how to build your own add-on modules is something that we're going to do the day after DevCon, so August 6th. So August 6th, there'll be kind of a private training session using the same tech we're using right now. But Christian's going to be going through how you can build your own add-on module. So to frame all that. Okay, cool. So Calvin, now that we have covered all the extraneous ways of connecting here, we have other questions along the way. MailSoft, a couple questions bouncing around. What is Zulu? Christian says 360 product. Ron says thanks. Christian says, okay, so I will point this out, what Christian just said. We use a variationist calendar in our cat barf system. So we have a system called cat barf, okay? It's an acronym, doesn't matter. But the point is it has a very early version of this calendar in it. We synchronize that calendar up to Google Calendar so the coaches, the FileMaker coaches and other people can see, the coach can see their schedule, right? So if they're on their iOS device, they can see the schedule. In that case, we allow them to see it. I don't think we allow them to change it on Google, so it's a push-out sync. It's not a two-way sync. We could have done that, but it was just more money to invest, and so it was kind of, you get into like more business questions about, do we really want engineers trying to schedule things on their Android device instead of coming into FileMaker where they're supposed to be working and scheduling a coaching session. So they can see it, but they cannot change it on the Android, but they could. There's no reason they couldn't. It's just a business problem. I decided that, you can look at it, you can remind it what's coming up, but if you want to change it, you need to get into FileMaker and do it correctly within the FileMaker cat barf interface that we built, which has other checks and things like that, and the managers can see what's going on. There's business things that come into this.
All right. Is everyone seeing my screen again?
Yes, they're all seeing your screen.
Okay. So let's see how this button is working. So we're talking about how This is not a FileMaker button. It lives in the web viewer, and when we're selecting the button, it's using the new FileMaker new option for calling a script from a web viewer, or calling a FileMaker script from the web viewer. So let's go ahead and look at my settings. Look at the settings here. And here's all the general settings for the calendar here. And what this add task area is a custom button. So here we have this, and if you want to put this in your app, you don't really need to know this or see it. But if you're going to mess around with the web viewer function, it's good to know. So here we have this is the part where we are when it's clicked, we're telling it what to do. So in this case, we are telling it to run the new task and to carry the focus, and we're telling it to run the script. And then that goes over to this new task function and run right here where it says perform or FileMaker.perform script. It is running that script and then giving the parameter, which was the date. In this case, we want whatever the focus date is. So because we have June 30th as our focus date, a new task will be June 30th as well. And so there's a few different ways that we're interacting with the web viewer. So we'll see that we have that one script for adding new tasks, and that's handled in this area here. And then we have also some other options. We have show task. So if I click on one of these options, it runs a script and opens up the window. So here I'll select it, and it as soon as I selected it, it opens up this. It starts the script and runs the process to open up the window that I want to see. And one of the interesting things that we ran into with this, or one of the really neat things, is that the FMURL protocol could never work in FileMaker WebDirect. And if you selected this button in FileMaker WebDirect, it would actually look for FileMaker Pro on your machine and tell FileMaker Pro to start working. And that really wasn't, that doesn't work, especially if somebody doesn't have FileMaker Pro. It just bring up an error. So with this new feature, the FileMaker.perform script from the web viewer allows us to call a script in FileMaker. So the way that in FileMaker WebDirect. So one of the problems that the way that we were working with this in FileMaker Pro was that to open a window, we would to open a task, we would open a new window, perform a find, get the result, and then display it. And or if we were moving, if we're moving a record from one day to another, we would open a window, perform a find, change the information, close the window. And if you'd see that on WebDirect, it just causes all of this flashing in the screen and makes it really unbearable. So what we're doing instead, there's still a little bit of flashing. It's probably equivalent to our calendar, our first implementation of the calendar, but it's a lot better than opening new windows. So instead what we're doing, let's go ahead and look at what our script parameter is here. We are passing the ID, which in the script parameter. And when we say set variable, it's pulling out all those parameters and getting the ID of the task. And then we're setting this global field with the ID for the task. And then making all of those changes through the relationship. And because it was made through the relationship, it's really fast. And we're not, we avoid the flashing screen on WebDirect. And it runs faster in FileMaker Pro as well. But that's one of the neat enhancements on this version as well. So we've got the new interactions with the web viewer, the faster way of updating the records and finding the records. And we also have the better integration with, we're avoiding using the FMURL protocol so that this can all work natively. The in FileMaker, one of the other things that that I kept running into that when I started working on this is you got to make sure that this checkbox, allow JavaScript to perform FileMaker scripts, is enabled, because if it's not enabled, you can hit your head against the wall for a while before figuring out there's one little checkbox in there that that needs to be enabled to see what's going for it to work, and that is helpful to know. Were you able to find that video, Richard?
Yes, I did. 0757. I'm going to bring it up over here. It covers this, but it should talk about, if I go to current course, if I go to 0757, it's this one right here. So there's no short description on it. There's no long description on it. It's just never been anything done with. In this video, and there's Calvin's smiling face right there, for those of you who don't remember who Calvin is, right? So there's Calvin. Actually, that's actually if he cuts his hair. Sometimes he doesn't cut his hair. It's a little shaggy, so I get worried about that. Calvin, how's your hair today? Is it shaggy? Yeah. Okay, roger that, Calvin. But he has always a big smile on his face. How it's hard to get mad at a guy who has a big smile on his face, right? So what do you do with that, right? So anyway. Yeah, so David said the custom button to add a task was created by Calvin. So Calvin doesn't do a lot of JavaScript coding, but he learned enough to actually kind of start building buttons and rewiring the buttons and stuff. So he's not, if I told him to build a calendar from scratch, he couldn't do it. But he can. The whole idea with the world of FileMaker, it's not about building, once again, I keep saying this, it's not about building new JavaScript things. It's about taking other free open source resources that are out there and tweaking them so they can work inside a FileMaker. You could take any JavaScript thing, drop it in a web viewer in FileMaker. It will work, but it won't talk back and forth. The talking back and forth is part of the conversation that we have with this video right here, two-way communication with web viewers, right? And there's a sample file in here, the whole thing. Really a great video that Calvin kicked ass and did, right? So that's why he took what he learned here, he applied it to the calendar and gave us the new calendar, which is why we're why he's here in the conversation today, right, Calvin?
That's right. Yeah. That if you're looking at doing some other kind of widget or something in a web viewer, this calendar is a great thing to look at. But you really want to go to that other video because it's really just goes to those really as what slimmed down and as basic as possible, so we can see what those components are. Because there's a lot of, if we look at these, we look at the different things going on here, there's a lot of stuff that can, I know just because I put it in that this part talks to FileMaker, and this one's labeled to talk to FileMaker, but then there's a lot of other stuff that can get distracting or confusing that is doing other important things with the calendar.
That's awesome. There was one question about Calvin. Alpha Lima 92651 wanted to know if you could retrofit the new calendar into starting point 7.
Yes, you can update, and obviously you want to make a backup first. So you would. No,
we don't believe in backups here, right? Ask some of my customers, right? It's no backups and everything's free. So keep going. You have to back it all up.
Yes, you definitely want to back it all up so you can fall to a backup if you can't figure it all out. So so there's a new field, and this I just called FileMaker because this is the part that actually talks to FileMaker. And then you would want to import all of that calendar code. That part's the easy part. So the other thing you would need to do is to go into the scripts, and the scripts that interact with the web viewer are in here, and they're in this do not rename folder. And the reason why we don't want to rename them is because those names are hard coded. They're referenced in in here. So you'll notice over here, we have 0882 new task, and that corresponds with 0882 new task right here. And so, you go through these 3 scripts, and then you need to update this where you need to update these scripts to match the new version. And there's a few differences. We're parsing the script parameter differently because previous script parameters were just a string of text separated by commas. The new parameter is actually a JSON object. We're also setting up we're changing the records through a relationship, so it needs that new field and new relationship, this T31 calendar HTML tasks global UUID table occurrence. That would need to be added. And so really you're updating the calendar HTML table, updating these 3 scripts, and adding 1 new table occurrence. So that's kind of the summary of what's involved with that.
All right, so there's a conversation going where these guys are talking. Hogel and Christian says he did it, and you said it, and Kogel said he did it in about an hour, but Hogel's kind of smart. So we have to penalize a normal human, right? So yeah, if you had to do it and you were smart and you had a smart person on tap, about an hour. If you're fumbling around, I don't know what to tell you on that. Or just pay for an hour of time from John Hogel or something. He can do it for you. Michael wants to know, does open remote still work in 19? So I guess I'll take that one here real quick.
Open remote?
Yeah, I don't know. We're talking host, right? Remote.
Is the question like the URL protocol, or is this an unrelated question?
Well, if I had to read it, all he says is, does open remote still work in FM19? The answer is That's not been deprecated, and open URL protocol has not been deprecated. It's just that there's a better way of doing something. Claris deprecates very few things in reality. They deprecate some image formats like EPS and some other formats like that. They deprecated the runtime, which has people squealing, which I always, I don't, without getting on my high horse about that. I really am happy to criticize Claris when appropriate, but that one, basically, Claris came up with a runtime, and the fundamental business issue with the runtime was that I have a big concept in business, or even working with my team, that it has to be a win-win conversation. If I'm getting something out of the deal, they need to be getting something out of the deal, and both parties are winning. When you buy FileMaker for $99 a year or whatever you're doing, and then you make a runtime and you give the product away to a bunch of people, Claris isn't getting any value from that. And people say, oh, well, they could upgrade to the full version. Very few people get the runtime upgrade to the full version of FileMaker. So Claris determined, and they said this over for the last 15 years, because the runtime's been around since FileMaker 3, which is 95 about, right? 94, 95. So 25 years it's been out there. Claris has been whining the entire time that they weren't making any money off of it. And so if you build a business model upon where you make the money and the person supplying some of the parts doesn't make anything, then eventually you're going to go out of business because the other person is going to quit and leave. And so the fact that they let the runtime survive so long was a testament to them kind of being nice. And I think they could have solved it a couple different ways, solving multiple problems simultaneously. But yeah, I'm not on their Christmas card list down there, so they do what they do, and we just get to watch from the sidelines. So anyway, but yeah, nothing has been deprecated other than the runtime and some image formats. There's no fundamental capabilities or script steps that have been removed. All right, well, that's it for today. I appreciate Calvin coming out, spending time with us, spending an hour. Calvin, do you have any other final parting conversations or comments about things?
Take a look at how the calendar's set up, and kind of get your feet wet with that, with doing stuff with JavaScript, and and making it work with FileMaker. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the JavaScript stuff is neat. Once again, this technique is also being used by a lot of people, and once again, we're going to have a session on the signature integration with WebDirect, which solves that problem. So see you tomorrow, and bring your thinking caps tomorrow. That's that term, thinking caps. Bring your brain tomorrow. Brains will be mandatory. Do not show up without your head. So appreciate it. Catch everyone tomorrow.
And the guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Try to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snaps a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.